that ends in CIL, and that's a body of people that reason together. And then there's counsel, which is advice and advocacy. It says that the Holy Spirit is our advocate, our counselor. So a counselor does what? He tells you, hey, this is a good idea, and this is not a good idea, right? He tries to keep you out of jail, doesn't he? So the Holy Spirit, that counsel that we have, gives us the ability to operate in an understanding of who God is, which is what we're going to talk about today, how that understanding, it takes counsel. Where do we get our counsel? It makes a very big difference. I showed some clips at the end of the message last week about some people giving counsel to our representatives regarding abortion. About vaccines. We talked about, this counsel. Where do we get this counsel? Well, today I want to talk about understanding, because we have to grasp that we have a spirit of understanding. People say, well, isn't knowledge the same as understanding or wisdom? No, there's a difference. I love what it says in the Passion Translation, that same quotation from Isaiah 11:1. When it reads through the list of them, but it says, when it gets down to the spirit of perfect understanding. We can try to have our own understanding from a human aspect, but this is talking about a perfect understanding that comes from God. So we have this opportunity to step into a perfect understanding. He's given us this spirit. So why do we walk around so much going, I don't know where I'm going, I don't know what to do? Do we have counsel? Do we have an understanding of what's going on? Do we have an understanding of what's happening in the earth? We're supposed to be the ones that are determining and discerning the signs and times and the things to come, to prophesy and to speak about what God is doing. If we're walking around going, I don't understand what's going on, because we haven't pressed into the Lord to let His Spirit discern that for us, with us, and through us. So this week I want to talk about, what is understanding? What is understanding? So, let me open my Bible here too. I got some scriptures today. Well, I'll go with that later. What is understanding? Dictionary.com. Might be an eye test for some of you back there, but it says, understanding is a mental process of a person who comprehends. Comprehension. Personal interpretation. Intellectual faculties. Intelligence. Mind. Now just stop right there. Think about this. Understanding. Mind. Whose mind are we supposed to have? The mind of Christ. Third one says the superior power of discernment. Enlightened intelligence. It's not just facts. There's a discernment here. There's a comprehension, a state of cooperative or mutual tolerant relations between people. If we have an understanding, we have an agreement. And as an adjective, it says characterized by understanding, prompted by, based on, or demonstrating comprehension, intelligence, discernment, empathy. If I understand where you're coming from, I can empathize with you. What you've been through, right? But I love what it says about understanding in the Strong's Concordance. That word 4920 is understanding in the Strong's Concordance. And it's Semonite. And what it says is it's put facts together. Means to arrive at a summary or final understanding complete with life applications. Accordingly, closely connected to a discerning and doing the preferred will of God. Say amen. Don't judge me on my Greek. I'm not very good at that. So, when it's talking about this connection between understanding, there's a comprehension. There's a discernment that comes with this. People say, 1 plus 1 equals 2. Well, we have to discern which ones we're talking about. How do we bring them together to make 2? That's an understanding. I can count 1, 2, 3. But am I counting the right ones? Am I discerning which ones to count, which ones not to count? So there's an understanding that comes through this. And we see this in Proverbs 9:10 from the Amplified. I like it in the Amplified. It says, the reverent fear of the Lord is, that is, worshiping Him and regarding Him as truly awesome, is the beginning of the preeminent part of wisdom. That's next week. We're going to talk about wisdom next week. Its starting point and its essence. And the knowledge of the Holy One, the knowledge is understanding and spiritual insight. So there's an understanding, there's an insight into this. It's not just facts. It's not just a spiritual revelation. Again, think about this. We kind of build on the spiritual aspect. You're going to see this throughout these 7 spirits that they kind of build upon one another. We're given knowledge, right? The spirit of knowledge, which is revelation. But what do we do with it? How do we discern what it is and weight it and application-wise? That's wisdom. So you see this, it grows through this. In Proverbs 8:14, counsel is mine, and sound wisdom. I am understanding. I love this. I am understanding. Power is mine. So are we starting to figure out where this understanding comes from? What it is, right? It says in Psalms 147:5, great is our Lord and abundant in strength. His understanding is infinite. His understanding. It doesn't say our understanding. Man is limited. We are finite. God is unlimited. So, how do we receive understanding? How do we gain understanding? Well, in Proverbs 2:1, here we go. My son, if you will receive my words, if you will receive my words and treasure my commandments within you, make your ear attentive to wisdom and incline your heart to understanding. For if you cry for discernment, lift up your voice for understanding. It has to be desired. There's a desire for this. It's an if. It doesn't just happen. Verse 4 goes on to say, if you seek her as silver and search for her as for hidden treasures, then. If, then. We always just want to go to the thens. We want to quote from here, but we forget the if parts. Then you will discern the fear of the Lord and discover the knowledge of God. For the Lord gives wisdom. From his mouth come knowledge and understanding. If, then. It comes from God. Job, probably, he goes through so much, but he's one of the wisest people in his community. They come to him to say, hey, why are you having these issues? Tell us what's going on. And here he is. He sums it up. And he's talking to all of humanity. All of humanity. Fear of the Lord. The fear of the Lord is true wisdom. To forsake evil is understanding. So to gain understanding, we have to forsake evil. Where do we gain our understanding? What's feeding us information? Where are we, again, going back to who's counseling us? How are we making determinations and grasping what is real, what's true, what's of God and what's not? We have to forsake evil. Evil is going to try to manipulate us. And in Daniel 2:21, and from the ESV, it says, he changes times and seasons. God does. He removes kings and sets up kings. He gives wisdom to the wise and knowledge to those who have understanding. He gives. We have professors and chemists and stuff that want to just tell us that we know how the earth was formed billions of years and came out of this, and we had all of these people trying to tell us because they're woke. When the real understanding can only come from him. Apart from him. Here's Moses. I love this to the nation of Israel. Moses is telling them, he says, observe them carefully. Observe them. He's talking about the commandments that God has given them. He's laid out the commandments for the nation. For this will show your wisdom and understanding in the sight of the peoples, who will hear of all these statutes and say, surely this great nation is a wise and understanding people. For what the nation is great enough to have a God as near to them as the Lord our God is to us whenever we call on Him. Do the nations around this earth look at America and go, wow, look at their God. Look at the wisdom and understanding they have. Or are we exporting wokeness? What are we exporting? Does the world look at us? When our nation was founded, it was founded on the biblical principles and the Constitution, and they came here to study why we were so successful. And do you know what they found? Because of something, because of the church, because of the pastors and the preachers teaching the revival and the realness of who Christ is. The awakening, not the wokeness, is what set America apart. Why they came here to look at this nation. King David, a man after God's own heart, right? His desire for understanding. In Psalm 119, now you can read the whole thing, there's like 100 and some odd verses to it, right? But he gets to verse 99. But do you realize in the first 98 verses, he asks God, give me understanding more than 10 times. More than 10 times. All he says, Lord, give me understanding. Give me understanding. Give me understanding. We get to verse 99. He didn't stop until he got there. I have more insight than all my teachers. For your testimonies are my meditation. What? The law, the testimony of who He is. I understand more than the aged because I have observed your precepts. Solomon's request in 1 Kings 3:9. So give your servant an understanding heart to judge your people, to discern between good and evil. For who is able to judge this great people of yours? To discern, understanding, a heart of understanding gives him the ability to discern good and evil and to judge people. Is it not said that we would judge angels? Are we in that position? We got to understand this is who we're called to be. A people that walk around with an understanding of who God is. God gives the understanding. I love the response to Solomon's request. It says, and God gave Solomon wisdom and understanding beyond measure, and breadth of mind like the sand of the seashore. It didn't just happen. Ask, and you shall receive. Knock, and it will be open. We have to pursue. We have to pursue it. Seek, and you will find. If we desire God's understanding, He gives it to us. He doesn't hold back. He's that good God that's still pursuing us. His desire is to give us it all. So the benefits and consequences, because if we have understanding, there are true benefits. If we do not have understanding, there are consequences. Proverbs 28:5 says, evildoers do not understand what is right. Okay. But those who seek the Lord understand it fully. So there is a benefit. There's a consequence. There's a benefit. I love this in Daniel. I like to use Daniel as an example. Daniel 1:17, when it says, to these 4 young men, now he's talking about Daniel himself, but also Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. So the four Hebrews. I love that he uses himself in there. I like that. To these 4 young men, God gave knowledge and understanding of all kinds of literature and learning. And Daniel could understand visions and dreams of all kinds. In verse 20, he goes on to say this, in every matter of wisdom and understanding about which the king questioned him, he found them 10 times better than the magicians and enchanters of his whole kingdom. Every other aspect, every other spirit that they could discern from was 10 times less effective than the Spirit of God. And that's just his assessment. We know that it's much higher than that. But we see a demonstration of understanding. There are benefits that come from an understanding that can then be translated into a people and a nation. But there's also consequences for a lack of understanding. Instead of opening this, I'm going to look in Deuteronomy 28. We go through all the benefits. 32:28. All the benefits of coming under God's ownership. Of all of the things, of the precepts. Hey, these are my laws. Follow them. They're going to have blessing in this. He gets to the end and he says, for a nation lacking in counsel, there is no understanding in them. Verse 28 says, for they are a nation. They've turned from God. They've forgotten everything He's done. He's already saying, you're going to forget. And when they do, what does He say? For they are a nation lacking in counsel, and there is no understanding in them. So by renouncing the precepts of God, the laws of God, they lack counsel, they lack understanding. Can we see this in America today? There's a consequence to not following. It says, why would that they were wise, that they understood this, that they would discern their future. He's saying that if they could just discern, if they were wise enough to grasp what's wrong, they could change their future. They could discern what's going to happen in the future. God doesn't hide things from us. He reveals them to us as we need, as He desires. His plan has been unfolding throughout history. He's told the prophets what's going to happen. He's given us the revelation of going forward. It says that Spirit that He's put inside of us will tell us what's to come. But we walk around going, I don't know. I don't understand anything. I look to the world to tell me, to put it into context for me. I'm not going to read all of these, but if you go on to, I highlighted Isaiah 5:13. It says, therefore my people will go into exile for lack of understanding. Those of high rank will die of hunger, and the common people will be parched with thirst. There's consequences to nations when we don't have understanding. When the people of God turn from their understanding or are not engaged to bring that understanding into a nation, guess what happens? The leaders, they will be held accountable. They will deal with hunger, but the people will be parched, dried up, will be hurt. Matthew 13:14, Jesus talks about, actually this is a reference to Isaiah 6, 9, and 10. It says in there, he's talking to those, he's talking in parables, and he's understanding, he's talking to them in the temple here, and he says, in their case, he's talking about the people that he's speaking to, that they just can't fathom who he is. They can't, like their blinders are just on. Their ears, and he talks about their eyes and their ears, they're unable to comprehend. He says, in their case, the prophecy of Isaiah is being fulfilled, which says, you will keep on hearing, but you will not understand. You will keep on seeing, but you will not perceive, for the heart of this people has become dull. Heart, we always talk about understanding is the heart issue. It's here. It's become dull. Why? Because they turned. We've turned. They cannot grasp it. It's an understanding, that discernment, they're unable to. And it says, with their ears they scarcely hear, and they have closed their eyes otherwise. It's a choice. It's a choice. It's not He wasn't condemning them. They made this choice. They closed their eyes. They didn't want to hear. When we speak truth, that life begins in the womb, but yet we have people say, no, it's just themselves. We can kill it. Otherwise, they would see with their eyes and hear with their ears and understand with their hearts and turn. I love this. And return, and I would heal them. Understanding has consequences. There's benefits and there are consequences. And I love this from Daniel. Now, this is a pagan king. Nebuchadnezzar was a pagan king, right? We call him this pagan king. But he grasps understanding in the end. He spends 7 years eating grass, out of his mind, right? Verse 34 says, at the end of the time, I, Nebuchadnezzar, lifted my eyes to heaven. What does he do? He turns to God. He turns to God. This pagan king turns to the Lord God Almighty, and understanding comes upon him. My understanding returned to me, and I blessed the Most High and praised and honored him who lives forever, for his dominion is an everlasting dominion, and his kingdom is from generation to generation. He looked up, this pagan king looked up, saw, grasped who God was, and his understanding came back. Romans 11:36 tells us, for from him and through him and to him are all things. To him be the glory. Apart from God, there can be no true understanding. There can't be. So the maturity. How do we mature in understanding? Well, Jeremiah tells us, but let him who boasts this, that he understands and knows me. So there's a maturity. If you want to boast, if you want to talk, that you're the best, know me. It only comes through him. If you want the best, that I am the Lord who exercises loving kindness, justice, and righteousness on the earth, for I delight in these things, declares the Lord. We have to know him to understand his character and his dynamic to be able to grasp it. That's the maturity, is knowing he loves me. Think about this. How many times do we say, well, God really didn't love me? You know, when things don't go my way, God doesn't love me. Is that his loving kindness that never changes? Do I have an understanding of that? Or am I casting my hate, my issues upon him? And that's what he says, justice and righteousness. God, they're not just, I want justice in my capital today. My justice. What about his justice? Because his righteousness and his justice are the foundation of his throne. I want what I want. There's a maturity when I say, not my will, but yours be done. I want to be a part of your will. I love this example in Mark 12. Jesus is talking to the scribe. The scribe's asking him, what's the most important thing about the law? And I love this. The scribe tells this to Jesus. He says to him, right, teacher. It's nice of the scribe to agree with Christ. I mean, I like that. And he goes on to quote this from Deuteronomy. And it says, it states that he is one, and there is no one else besides him. And to love him with all the heart, and with all the understanding, and with all the strength, and to love one's neighbor as himself, is much more than burnt offerings and sacrifices. Here's what's interesting. When Jesus saw that he had answered him intelligently there, if you translate that, it has an understanding. That it goes beyond a comprehension. It's not just regurgitating the law back to Christ. Jesus could perceive that he was giving it. And what does he say? He said to him, you are not far from the kingdom of God. He was close. He was on the threshold of salvation to know that that's who God is. And he's standing right in front of you. That's how close he was. Even a scribe was close to the kingdom of God because of the understanding of who God is. The road to Emmaus, I love this example. It says, then their eyes were opened and they recognized him. They're walking along the road, talking with him. They said, don't you know what's happened? And Jesus says, no, tell me about it. So they're explaining to Jesus what's happened. And then when they sit to eat and their eyes were open, he says, our eyes were open and they recognized him and he vanished from their sight. And they said, were not our hearts burning within us while he was speaking to us on the road, while he was explaining this? That burning is an understanding. It comes alive. When God gives us a revelation or a new understanding of the Scripture, who he is, it changes us and it burns within us. Later on, Jesus appears to them and they're challenging. Thomas says, hey, let me touch you and put your hand here, let me eat something. But he says, no, when he said these words, he says, these are my words which I spoke when I was still with you. That all things which are written about me in the law of Moses and prophets and the Psalms must be fulfilled. I love this part. This is verse 45. Then he opened their minds to understand the Scriptures. It takes God's Spirit to come upon us to truly understand the dynamics of him and his Scriptures and everything that is entailed. And God opens our minds. When we desire understanding, the Spirit will continue to open our minds, open our discernment, our hearts. The transforming power is released. That same word understanding is the same Greek 49:20, synaime. That understanding and application. It's the same word he's using here. It says he opened his mind to understand. They could put the facts together. They could apply them as the understanding the will of God. That's what we're after. 2 Timothy 2:7 says that I love this. Paul's encouraging Timothy. He says, think it over what I say, for the Lord will give you understanding in everything. See, maturity in the Lord is not measured in years. It's by understanding. God doesn't care. I shouldn't say God cares about everything. How many years you've been a believer doesn't matter. It's not a badge of honor. It says, I've been a believer for 40 years. Well, what have you done over those times? What has that changed you? I'm thankful that over the last 20 years of coming back to Christ has transformed me to be more like him. It's a continuous struggle. It's a continuous battle. But maturity is not based in years. We gotta get away from that. That's why I think when Paul is writing this to Timothy, because Timothy's a young guy. And us old guys don't like to listen to young guys. Because we think they don't have the years in yet. How many years of training did all the disciples have? 3. And they changed the world. Guess what? God has this revelation that he can impart into us, and we can be the difference makers of this world tomorrow, today. The age doesn't matter. Gender doesn't matter. That's a full understanding because it's not based on time. So living by the Spirit. I love Ephesians 1:18 says, I pray that your hearts will be flooded with light so that you can understand the confident hope as he's given to those he called, his holy people, which are his rich and glorious inheritance. Verse 19 goes on to say this, and I also pray that you will understand the incredible greatness of God's power for us who believe him. Whoa, just stop right there. That you will understand the incredible greatness of God's power for us who believe in him. How can we gloss over this? Paul is praying for this Ephesus church because he wants them to be empowered by the Spirit that God's given them. The power of the Spirit. It's infinite. We have to live in this understanding of the power we have. Understanding of what God has given us. It's not just salvation. This is the doorway into so much more. The fullness of His Son. In Hebrews 11:3 it says, by faith we understand that the worlds were prepared by the Word of God, so that what is seen was not made out of things which are invisible. What's those first 4 words? By faith we understand. Faith is understanding. If I don't have faith in what it says here, there's no understanding that's going to happen. Understanding is faith. By faith we understand. We understand by faith. It grows, it builds. That's how that seed that's a mustard seed. That's not me. Tell them I'm busy. It grows. It grows. It matures by understanding. Colossians 2:2 says this, that their hearts may be encouraged, having been knitted together in love and attaining to all the wealth that comes from the full assurance of understanding. Just stop right there. Wait a second. It says that we can attain, we're knitted together in love and attaining to the wealth that comes from the full assurance of understanding. It results in the true knowledge of Christ, of Jesus, of God's mystery that is Christ Himself. We knit it together. When we start to have that spirit of understanding, it knits us together in the love, and we become the fullness. We have the wealth. I'm not talking about dollars and cents, but it's going to be included in that, because it's all His. We haven't figured that out yet. It's not just the wealth of dollars and cents, but it's the wealth of His Spirit and the wealth of the fullness that brings us together, resulting in the knowledge, the revelation of God's Christ being revealed more and more and more. It's that proverbial onion. You do one layer, then you do another layer, and you do another layer, and another layer, and another layer. But Christ smells better than it is. Ephesians 5:15 says, so then, do not be foolish. Oh, wait a second. I'm reading the wrong one. I'm ahead. Therefore, be careful how you walk. Not as unwise men, but as wise, making the most of your time. Because the days are evil. So then do not be foolish, but understand what the will of the Lord is. We have to grasp the will of the Lord. That's the only through understanding can we know the will of the Lord. And I love I break this down a little bit more. That verse 17. Again, here we come back to that same understanding word, sinai. Man, I should practice that. But if you look at this, when it's talking about this, so do not be foolish, but what the preferred will of the Lord is. This is where we have an understanding. Do not be foolish, but understand the will of the Lord. It all takes a connection. It takes an understanding of everything that God is doing. He's bringing it together. That's the understanding that the Spirit brings to us. In 1 John 5:20, it says, and now we know that the Son of God has come. And we know that the Son of God has come and has given us understanding so that we may know Him who is true. If we're living in the light of His understanding, we know and we can operate in what is truth. He is truth. Everything that He's done and proclaimed that we can do, we have to take those facts and we have to have an understanding to apply them to our lives. That's understanding. understanding that it brings me back to this word, this understanding. I couldn't help but think about the sons of Issachar. I think I talked about it earlier in 1 Chronicles 12, when it says that they were men who understood the times and seasons and knew what Israel should do. Understanding, being a people of understanding, aren't we supposed to be decreeing what our cities should do? What our families should do? What should be taught in our schools? How we should be governed? What our government should do? Because the sons of Issachar had an understanding of the times and seasons. If we don't have an understanding of where we are, what's happening around us through a biblical worldview, then we cannot even think about changing a nation or telling a nation what to do. But it says that with this understanding, this putting facts together, meaning complete life application, means that we're here to bring God's wisdom and understanding to this nation to be governed by, to raise a family by, to work by, to live by. It's critical. We have to know the times and seasons. So I think that this builds upon itself. I know we've kind of gone in reverse order. So we started with the fear of the Lord without understanding who He is and having an awe-inspiring understanding. He is just beyond our comprehension. That's the fear of the Lord. Starts everything else proceeds after that. It comes after. We can't have any of the benefits if we have no relationship and understanding who God is. Then He gives us the spirit of knowledge, which is revelation. Understanding more and more of who He is. He wants to reveal more and more of Himself to us. Understanding the power He's given us. The spirit of might and power. He's given us authority and power. And we walk around like we're, okay, just waiting for the rapture. It'll be okay. I'll pray for you. You have the power of living God. Lay hands and decree God's will on the earth. The Spirit of Counsel, we talked last week. Where do we get our counsel? Are we the ones that are counseling those in the earth? Or are we letting others counsel? And the Spirit of understanding. We have to grasp understanding. We are this spirit, all aspects are within us. And I love this picture that from James Nesbitt, that we're walking lampstands of Yahweh. James Nesbitt's art is awesome. I give him all the credit. But see, we have to have this discerning spirit. That's the understanding. It comes with discerning. If we have the mind of Christ, but we have the mind of Christ. That mind is the God-given capacity of each person to think, to receive what God's speaking to us. But an understanding is putting it into a life application. It's acting upon what we've learned, what we've been taught, what we've been counseled, the revelation that we've been given. We have a new nature. We've been created to be like Christ. Righteous and holy. It's our job to bring understanding to the earth. We're to live this life that discerns the will of God. To bring it into this earth. That's why we're an ecclesia. That's why we're a body of believers. Again, going back to that divine counsel we've talked about before. That God desires to counsel us. And He's given us the power and the revelation to give us the understanding, times and seasons, to bring His kingdom to earth. To live a life that shows people who He is. To bear His image. It's not a burden. It's not, I can't bear this anymore. It's, I bear it. I respond in the sense of reflecting who he is. That's who we are. That's what we're called to be. Anything less is of Satan. Because it's a lie. Because God said, I want you to have the full. I didn't come just to give you a life. I came to give you life to the full, abundant, more than you can even ask for. We have to have the understanding that God has given us to raise up a family, to work, to govern. That understanding comes from God. Anything outside of his understanding is of man and will benefit man. And we've seen this. We're living in it. We're living in a time where man's laws are usurping God's laws. You know, when Moses was warning the Israelites about renouncing and turning from the God that had brought them out of Israel, he says, those things are going to happen to you. You're going to see famine. You're going to see destruction. You're going to beg. But it's up to us to turn, to repent, to turn this nation. He says, if my people, he's always given us that promise, if my people who are called by my name will humble themselves and pray, turn from their wicked ways. Not just pray for, I hope, turn from their wicked ways. Then I will hear from heaven, and I will heal their land. We have to speak the understanding into this. We have to live the understanding of God in this nation. Amen? Stand with me if you would.